2 days after the US's capture of Venezuela's president on drugs and weapons charges, Donald Trump posed in a photo with US Senator Lindsey Graham holding a Make Iran Great Again cap. And in June last year, Trump had written, "It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iran regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change?" For more than a week, Iran has been roiled in anti-government protests reported to cover much of the country amid a severe cost of living crisis driven by sanctions, inflation and economic mismanagement. Protester economic grievances have increasingly merged with political demands, with some calling for the, quote, resignation of the dictator. In this video, they chant, "This year is a year of blood. Saad Ali will be overthrown." And with clashes between protesters and security forces leading to dozens of reported deaths, Trump wrote on January 2nd, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go." Trump was asked about these comments after the capture of Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro.
There's been protesters killed in Iran. You said we were locked and loaded, ready to go. What is the line there for when the U.S. is going to get involved in those protests?
We'll take a look. We're watching it very closely. If they start killing people like they have in the past, I think they're going to get hit very hard by the United States.
So, after Venezuela, is Iran next? Or, with the Times of London reporting the supreme leader plans to escape to Russia, like Syria's Bashar al-Assad, could regime change happen without US intervention? And what may be the implications for Taiwan? Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Ian Kavat. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Tonglong Guo, United Daily News Deputy Editor-in-Chief, and Michael Chen, Democratic Progressive Party International Affairs Director. And we also have Eric Cho, National Yangming Jiao Tong University Center of Human Sciences Professor. Tonglong and Michael, welcome back. And Eric, a very warm welcome to the show. In public, at least, Iran's supreme leader is remaining defiant, telling followers on Saturday this.
ما با معترض حرف میزنیم، باید حرف بزنن مسئولین با معترض، اما با اغتشاشگر حرف زدن فایده ای نداره. اغتشاشگر رو باید به جای خودش نشاند. ما در مقابل دشمن کوتاه نمیاییم. ما با اتکاء به خدای متعال، با اتکال به خدای متعال و با اطمینان به همراهی مردم انشاءالله به توفیق الهی دشمن رو به زانو در خواهیم آورد.
Now, major US sanctions on Iran were imposed after the 1979 US embassy in Tehran seizure, which lasted more than 1 year. Iranians blamed the US for its part in the 1953 deposing of Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, restoring Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who ushered in a reign of authoritarianism marked by political repression, ending only in 1979 with the Iranian Revolution and the installation of Supreme Leader Ruhollah Khomeini. In 1984, the US designated Iran a state sponsor of terror. US sanctions expanded over time, and UN sanctions were later imposed in response to Iran's nuclear program. The 1953 British and US move to remove Mossadegh was motivated by fears over British oil interests and potential Soviet influence during the Cold War. So, Michael, let me come to you first. So that's the history. What does Iran mean to the US now? And do you think that the Ayatollah is concerned about US intervention right now?
Well, I think the Ayatollah should be concerned and should be worried because, we've heard what President Trump has said, that if there are more deaths to follow, he's going to hit Iran very hard. Now, that's a conditional threat. That's not just empty rhetoric. And if there is any doubt, U.S. taking action in last June, on Iran's nuclear facilities, and its action last week, a few days ago in Venezuela, should show that these are not empty threats. Should show that there is credibility behind those threats.
Okay, Tonglong. So what does Iran represent for the US, especially its security interests?
I think part of the reason now the U.S. is considering a strike on Iran for the second time is that they haven't really finished what they have started on the first time. There's still rumor and even intelligence estimate that Iran still keep some of its nuclear capability. That's a threat to Israel. And Israel have been proposing to the United States, we need to have another alliance strike on Iran. And the second thing is, I think the U.S. is trying to support the protester not in a direct way, but by threatening the Iranian authority, no more crackdown. If you ever dare to crack down, we would retaliate very strongly. The overall strategy is not really something we're going to see occupation army from the United States to go over Iran, but rather to see a weak Iran or Iran that is gradually is going to transform itself into a more proper place.
Through regime change?
Through regime change or through a more circular way of, Iran is a regime that is run by clerks as well as politicians. And this is not a normal regime as the U.S. is saying it. So I think I would put more emphasis on what the U.S. is going to do in the Western Hemisphere, rather than go all the way to the Middle East and to attack Iran in such cases. So maybe it's more reasonable that Trump is saying that we're going to take over Greenland. That's a more logical step I think the U.S. would take.
For China, moving to China now, what would the loss of Ali Khamenei be compared to the loss of Nicolas Maduro?
The beginning of this year, it starts with all kind of chaos. So I think this is, I think that Donald Trump is sending a symbol, a very strong signal to all the authoritarian regime, especially like Iran and other, authoritarian country in Latin America. So.
Do you think that Iran is more valuable to China than Venezuela?
Sure. I think Iran is much valuable than Venezuela because Iran exports 19% of its oil, to China, and China relies on Iranian oil about 23%. Yeah, so it's the the number one country. Yeah,
so much greater than the Venezuelan oil. Is there anything else? Is it the nuclear?
Well, also, Iran is the strong ally of China, right? So Beijing do have some, strategic allies like, Russia, Iran, Venezuela. So we can see here, if, Venezuela is gone, then Iran is gone, then, China will feel encircled.
Now, speaking on a nationwide tour of shipyards and factories dubbed Arsenal of Freedom, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had this to say about the Venezuela attack. Watch.
We're reestablishing deterrence that's so absolute and so unquestioned that our enemies will not dare to test us. The world started wondering whether America really was strong and whether America really could lead. Well, that's over now.
And here's footage of a crowd chanting the Persian phrase, "What a futile delusion," which was Elon Musk's reply to Khamenei's ex-post saying, "We will never give in to the enemy." Now, back in September 2025, Reuters broke a story citing a classified International Atomic Energy Agency report which found that Iran had enriched more than 440 kilograms of uranium as of June 13th. That is enough, if enriched further, the report said, for 10 nuclear bombs, according to an IAEA yardstick. Trump had authorized strikes on 3 nuclear sites in Iran on June 22nd in an attempt to wipe out Iran's capability. They followed Israel's strikes on June 13th. Now, when it comes to Iran's military, a report last March by the US Director of National Intelligence warned Iran has fielded a large quantity of ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as UAVs that can strike throughout the region, and continues efforts to improve their accuracy, lethality, and reliability. Iran's defense industry has a robust development and manufacturing capacity, especially for low-cost weapons such as small UAVs. The same report mentioned Iran has also deployed small boats and submarines capable of disrupting shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. However, its ground and air forces, while among the largest in the region, suffer from outdated equipment and limited training. Meanwhile, a US congressional report from June also warned of Iran's short and medium-range ballistic missiles, including the Shahab-3 family of liquid-fueled ballistic missiles with an estimated range of 2,000 kilometers, far enough to strike Europe, but not the US. Michael, let me ask you, so given all Iran's capabilities, what would be the security-related aim of the US if it did want to remove Khamenei?
Well, I think if the U.S. ever targeted Khamenei, it wouldn't be just symbolic. It would be to create a huge system shock. And it would be about paralyzing decision-making at the top. So, the clerk system, the whole clerk politician governing system that, would be dismantled and potentially leading way for a new, not anti-American government to take shape, as it seems to be the way in Venezuela, or it seems to be the US plan anyways, trying to install a new government that is not as hostile, right? But of course, how that takes place is another question. There are a lot of differences between the capabilities of Iran, the situation of Iran and Venezuela, which would make, you can't just copy and paste the same method and action that you did in Venezuela. So that kind of element is out there. So it'll be a risky operation.
So I want to drill down into those security considerations, Tonglun. Let's get straight to a Taiwan contingency. What is Iran's main value to China?
I think the one have just been mentioned. The energy supply is the most important value. And the second thing is, for a strategic value for Russia and China is different from Venezuela. Venezuela is situated in the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine had been there for over 2 centuries now. So what Russia and China have been hoping is that the Trump administration will exercise strategic retractions instead of just like Secretary Hegseth have said, we're going to reestablishing our deterrence. That's a very different logic. If Russia and China are expecting a kind of respect for mutual sphere of influence, then they will expect the United States will not attack a place so close with Russia and China and so valuable for Russia and China.
And so, Eric, what does that mean then? Do they expect that the Middle East, somewhere that's quite close to Russia, would be left alone by the US?
But I don't think there will be, the regime change or, try to eradicate, the whole, Iranian regime, because they will be difficult. And especially for Trump, he has that kind of a transactional personality, so he is not going to let the US, on the ground in Iran. So probably he will do the, strategic strike from air, or pave the way for the rival to, remove the regime. But he is probably not going to there.
Okay. And Michael, going back to the Taiwan contingency, we spoke about oil. Is that just the supply of oil, Iranian oil, to China during a possible war? Or is it also to do with the Strait of Hormuz in terms of the shipping through the strait?
Well, of course, shipping is a key factor in this. But I think another part that is important about how China, Russia, and Iran can together threaten the U.S. in a conflict is that, they're not working on a joint war plan, but together they're stretching American power across regions. And I think that's a key point. China is the main actor in the Taiwan Strait. It understands that the U.S. fights with allies, Japan, Australia, Philippines, but it also understands that U.S. power and resources are limited, right? So China's testing whether the U.S. and its allies can manage multiple scenarios at the same time. Iran's role is important in this because the more conflict it creates there, the more distracted U.S. is, and the more resources the U.S. has to pull into the region. And Russia plays the same role. right? That's why China wants the war in Ukraine to continue on so that resources can be distracted.
Yeah.
So I think that's how these three powers can play together to challenge the U.S. in a potential Taiwan conflict.
Okay. Tongnon, Michael had mentioned a little bit earlier that, a Venezuelan attack is different to an Iranian one.
Right.
How capable would Iran be in terms of defending itself from any such attack?
I don't think Iran can really defend itself, judging from the attack we saw last year. That there's no early warning. There's no
the strikes on the nuclear
strike
sites.
on nuclear site, right? That should be their jewel on the crown, but they cannot defend themselves. So, but there's another thing I think Trump should consider. Iran is about twice the size of Venezuela, and they have 3 times the population more than Venezuela. So how do you going to force the Iranian government having your own way? We see that in Venezuela, instead of asking the Nobel laureate, the opposition leader, Machado, to become the new leader, they are inviting the vice president as the acting president. And that maintains the whole structure of Venezuela, military intelligence intact. So why do Americans want that? Because the major purpose is, I will have to say, is for the oil. They have to keep the oil pumping out regularly. They don't want to have a regime change in Venezuela. So we'll have to see whether that their objective would change over time. But so far, what we are seeing is that Trump is only want to use a limited measures to have the maximum outcome.
Okay, and Eric, how much can it depend or expect from its allies, its partners, Russia and China? Given that Iran probably, you would think, thinks that it has provided a lot of support to both of them. Russia, ammunition, drones, suicide drones, diplomatic support for the Ukraine war. To China, heavily discounted oil, apparently savings of $7 billion a year. What do you expect China and Russia will do?
Well, I consider China and Russia, they probably will try to help, providing, more advanced weaponry.
What form of weaponry do you think?
Well, anti-missile and, the early, the most advanced, radar system, try to detect, the attack from, United States. The other alternative will be much worse to Beijing if, the current regime will remove and replaced with the more pro-US Western regime, there will be total loss for the Beijing.
So because of that, though, would you not expect them to do China to try to do more? That it wants to keep Khamenei in place?
Yeah, I think they will try to do that.
Michael, your reaction to that?
Well, I think Iran will be expecting more from Russia and China, and they will try to offer.
Do you think that they were disappointed after the nuclear strikes?
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that Russia and China are limited in what they are able to offer, right?
So not the weapon systems that Eric mentioned?
They could try to offer more weapon systems, but also, we're not sure how effective they will be. Look at Venezuela. That was kind of a, no confidence vote on Chinese systems and Russian systems. China will offer more support, economic support, oil purchases because, it benefits them. Maybe some financial channels and diplomatic cover, but they won't be offering military intervention, that's for sure. Neither is Russia. Russia is too bogged down with Ukraine. China is quite some distance away from Iran. And also, they know that their capabilities are limited. Look at Venezuela. When the thing happened, China issued and Xi Jinping issued a statement condemning the U.S. for violating international law, a very hypocritical statement. But no threats, no promises to do anything if the U.S. did not return the Maduro couple. And the foreign ministry spokesperson was asked about it and couldn't come with a cohesive answer. So I think it'll be the same logic with Iran. They are limited in their options and what they can offer. That's my opinion.
Okay. Now, ancient Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu writes that the ultimate goal of warfare is to win without fighting. He says, supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy resistance without fighting. Sun Tzu presents a hierarchy of actions to achieve this goal. He says, the best way to conduct warfare is to thwart the enemy's strategy. Next best is to break up his alliances. Next best is to engage his army, and the worst strategy is to attack walled cities. So coming to you, do you believe that, we're looking at the second one, which is to break up or to attack the enemy's alliances. Do you think the US is possibly taking a leaf out of Sun Tzu's book?
The book of Sun Tzu is actually a classic textbook for West Point. So they learn from Sun Tzu from early on. I think for the current administration, they want to demonstrate, although everyone is saying that the US capability is not like before, that when it really concentrated on a certain point, no one can win the United States. I mean, this is a force that you cannot stop. I think that is the strongest.
Do you think that narrative has only changed after Venezuela?
Yes.
Like Pete Hegseth said before,
I think they have demonstrated in the case of Venezuela that if ever there's a country want to challenge the United States, the sufferer will be like Venezuela. But if they want to do it, they would have to put on a more ideological justification for that.
Eric, what's your view? Do you think it is this strategy? It's rather than targeting China directly, target its allies. So,
yes.
Like we said, Venezuela,
yes.
Possibly Iran.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I will rather say it probably a coincidence. But I don't think, they really have what they kind of playbook. Let me put another thing here. Just recent news, when you watch the interview from, the Stephen Miller, okay, his remark is totally imperialism. It will be difficult to say, Trump really has the playbook of Sun Tzu to conduct his strategic actions. But I was later to say, probably he want to, he want to prioritize his strategic target. So that would be, the most important thing to him. Especially he tried to, he's a transitional, personality. He want to make, have oil and making the money. Yes.
Right. Michael, final words to you. Eric mentioned there, it shows the resolve of the US. That operation in Venezuela was called Operation Absolute Resolve. Tonglo mentioned that that China perhaps was thinking that the US would retreat. It appears that Donald Trump has no such idea to do that.
Well, clearly not. Clearly that's not the case. This is not, just an isolationist president that someone can easily portray or wanting to portray him as. It's very much U.S. national interest first, right? Yeah, I mean, and so he's done this action in Venezuela, and if it's in the national interest, he will take action in Iran. And I think if I were Iran or North Korea or other rogue actors, I'd be nervous. North Korea may be not so high on his list, but honestly, maybe not today, but another day, it's possible. He's probably doing it one after the other. I'm not sure if he has a grand vision or a grand strategy, like a Sun Tzu-like strategy, but whether by design or not, I think this series of actions is putting pressure on Russia and on China.
Yeah. So how nervous do you think that makes China, very briefly?
Look, I think U.S. action recently, and especially in Venezuela, and potential action in Iran and others, all of this creates uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's bad for China. China dislikes that uncertainty. It keeps them on edge and makes them think twice, as they should.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Songlong Guo, Michael Chen, and Eric Cho for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching the show today. Stay safe and see you next time.